I really don't like a paper manual concept anymore. There's a couple of reasons. IP is everything in a business now. You know, that's what you're writing down. It's your business DNA. You're recording it on paper. For everything that's written down, it's a joyous moment when you say, why do we do this? And people go, I don't know. I think it's always been this way, and I think there's a better way. In the company's house slot, until there is an option to tick, I'm a franchise, we haven't quite made it in franchising, despite how many people we employ.
Yeah, right. So what would you put at the moment then? Would like a management consultancy or something?
Yeah.
Weird.
Probably a training company.
Yeah. Hello, welcome to the Franchise Marketing Show. In this episode, we're joined by Louise Harris, who has worked in loads of different aspects of franchising. She's been a franchisee, she's been a franchisor, and in this episode, we talk about ops manuals. This is something that she knows a lot about, and she talks about how ops manuals have changed over the past sort of 10, 15 years and how they're going to be looking into the future. We shot this episode towards the back end of last year. It's a really interesting episode. I hope you enjoy it. So firstly, just tell me a little bit about you and in your career, because I've done a little bit of research and I've read like a little bit about like you were a franchisee and then a franchisor. Right. So tell me a little bit about your whole journey.
So my journey in franchising started when I met my husband and we decided that we might franchise his business, and we went to a franchise exhibition. It was actually, we started at Olympia and had a look round and kind of totally distracted ourselves and fell in love with a brand, which actually in hindsight, it was the brand itself which didn't particularly work. And we bought the franchise. It was a lettings and property finding franchise. But ironically, I learned so much about franchising just from being a franchisee. And then we decided it was time to franchise the business. I sold that back to the franchisor, and we then set up Wilkins Chimney Sweep.
Yeah, I think that's where I first sort of knew of you.
It is. That's where I think we first met. So we franchised that and launched in 2010, and then sold the business in 2018. Which was just a horrible experience. I mean, actually, it was made very easy in terms of its technical sale, but I really missed it.
Okay.
And then I joined a couple of other brands, and most recently, child maths education franchise, Mathnasium, and I do their recruitment, but I actually am leaving there to focus on where I have found my home, which is a niche of operations manuals, which is, I think it's a very dull topic for many people, but my little goal, my little mission is to make it a little bit more energised.
That's interesting. That came up a lot when I was sort of reading about you, operations manuals, so I'm glad you said that. That's like a lot of my questions are around operations manuals. Good. So tell us, what is it like for people that are just starting and maybe just looking into franchising now? What is an operations manual?
So there are a couple of key documents for franchising. The first is the franchise agreement, which tells the franchisee these are the parameters of the business relationship. It's very formal. It's written in legal English, and it refers in that legal agreement to the operating system or ops manual, or it will have a number of names. The operations manual itself is how do you run this business? It's the franchisor's know-how, but it's a message. It has two parts. The first really is how do you be a franchisee successfully in this industry and run the business. And the second is, what is the business? How do I actually make the burger or fit the loft ladder? Yeah. You know, it's really much more technical.
Okay. And then how, because that's quite a dry subject,
you're right.
How do you make that interesting? Or how do you make that so people are like, well, I'm actually interested in this?
Yeah. Well, I think probably I need to start at where I start, which is that I just don't like reading tomes of paper, I can't pick up a textbook and read a textbook. And so where I come from is I want to create information that is usable by the end user. So they look at it and don't think, I can't face reading that. Now, the most obvious go-to is video. I think video really lends itself. It's so easy to take a little handheld video of a specific incident or an example of something, or an online capturing your moves with a mouse. But that only satisfies part of the information, because there's also, how does that apply? What's the context of it? So I just take it from a point of writing as few words as possible. I don't apply the same to speaking, by the way, but I apply as few words as possible. I like bullet points. I use colour. I try to use accessible fonts, particularly if there's a franchisor who has maybe a lot of people who are not highly literate. Maybe they're working in a low paid role, where actually reading and being part of that, English may not be their first language, but also that people with dyslexia, any sort of dyscalculia or anything where they're struggling, I will try and work with the client about what the needs are of the people that we're delivering information to. That said, it's the way it's delivered. I really don't like a paper manual concept anymore. There's a couple of reasons. IP is everything in a business now. You know, that's what you're writing down. It's your business DNA. You're recording it on paper. And I have been handed manuals of quite big, very well-known franchises and told, could you just replicate that for my business?
Really?
And that's, I mean, I just say to them, you are breaking the law. It's so fundamental, copyright laws, and you probably know, working in the field that you do, copyright laws are just treated like nothing, really. I mean, I'd like to think no one would rip off a book, but that's exactly what they're doing.
There's stuff happening with like AI now as well, like people taking like IP, like you could create like cartoon characters and make anything you wanted out of them.
Yeah.
And there doesn't seem to be like a law that's applied to that. Like people can just create whatever they want.
Yeah.
So I think maybe like with the franchise stuff as well, they kind of like,
how
do they get caught, or how do they get?
Yeah. And that's the deal. I think the danger of AI in this scenario is that you say, you know, how do you? I use it. Don't get me wrong. I'm a huge advocate. It takes a massive amount of work and away from me, which is great, because I do take the laziest approach. Because it's cheaper for my clients. I don't want to be saying, oh, well, you know, this is going to cost you £15,000 or £20,000. That's a horrendous amount of money. Yeah. So let's find the best option for you. So with AI, what I always say is we can write the structure of your manual. We can say, you know, what are the basics of frying a piece of chicken? But actually, what's the special part that you do? What's your DNA in this? And it will be the top tip. You know, I suggest you, I don't know, coat it in flour, and this is what your coating's going to be. Or it will be something more complex. Obviously, technology usually is bespoke in franchises, so there is something unique. And we can only write about what they do. The point about the businesses is essentially the business models are all the same. Yeah. You know, we have something that we want somebody else to buy. It's a service or a product, and there's a route to market for that. But not everyone will do that the same way, and not everyone will structure it in the same way, and the service nuances around that. I mean, there are quick service restaurants who don't want to write down about customer service. You could smile when you hand over your burger. But others who absolutely have it very scripted, they want upsell, they want much more engaged. Those are the nuances of the business. That's very simplified. So AI can only do part of it. So and because people are such bad readers, we then look at the AI. We've got to or the results, and we've got to be able to red pen that properly. I would say a large part of writing a manual is editing. It's actually saying, well, I've read something about this, or this contradicts that. The classic is something where they say you must do this, and then in the next sentence it says you might like to do this, or you should, or we want you to consider. So it's actually editing and fact checking. But the importance of the manual is that it's got to be up to date. One of my best and most fun pieces of work actually was getting a manual that had barely been touched, but with 200 addendums that I needed to feed into it and then rewrite it. And that was, I actually really enjoy that. I'm right back at my English lessons at school and I love it. But then how do you produce it? So I have developed some software that I would like to be using, or I would have liked to use when I was a franchisor. It's solely the manual, solely presenting it. It's a brand, for me, that one piece of work it's got to speak to the brand. Any franchisee needs to be looking at that material and thinking it belongs to that company. So for me, we produce it in a website format, but most importantly, we capture change easily. Yeah. So anyone can go in and update it, because that's been one of the biggest hurdles is the minute you've got in an agreement, follow the manual, and the manual still refers to, stoke up the boiler, you've lost actually credibility, but you are also in danger of losing that franchisee and a lot of money with it, because it's not telling the franchisee actually what they should be doing. So keeping it up to date is absolutely critical.
Yeah, one of the things that kept coming up when I was researching into you was the words living and breathing document.
Yeah.
So again and again. And I was working with someone this week, and I was just doing like franchisee interviews, and the franchisor came along. She said it was so interesting, like listening to them, because they'd come up with like some ideas about like, we do this slightly differently, but we think this works really well.
Yeah.
So she's like, I can adjust what we're doing across the board because it's worked really well for this franchise. So like, do franchisees and like, do you have to know the ops manual like inside out, or is it sort of always moving, always changing, and you've got to keep up to date with it?
As a franchisee?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's actually the franchise. I believe it's the franchisor's job to make sure that the franchisee knows what's changed. And I think that's where the difficulty lies, because the minute a franchisee is away from you, and of course the nature of franchising is they are geographically away from you, it's not enough to mention it in a in a conversation online or a Zoom call. It's not enough really to send an email. You need a feedback loop, and it's incumbent on the franchisor to keep it up to date, but it's also sort of written into the manual, into the agreement, that you will keep up to date as a franchisee. So when we issue an update, you have to follow that. I think it will depend on the nature of the update, of the change. But being sustainable is yes, it's a catchword, and in this case it's not a green issue. It's actually about not becoming this, it's written in the manual that way, so we have to do it that way. It's actually just being nimble and agile as a company, and being able to quickly tell somebody that there's a change, help them to implement it, and not make change for change's sake. Every change, there's a reason. There's either a legal requirement, or somebody has realised that there's a much easier way to do it. Whatever pushback you get, people don't like change always. It's never intended that we're going to make life more difficult for you. It's going to simplify things.
Yeah, I remember I've worked in places, this is years ago now because I've been doing this for ages, but like if anything changed, it would be like, oh God, this one little thing's going to make my day a lot worse.
Yes,
And it weirdly reminds me of like the highway code, and like when there's little changes to that, and it's like, oh yeah, but you've got to keep up with that. But I did my driving test in 2009.
Yeah.
So like, how often do I go around reading it?
Yeah.
And like, am I being communicated that effectively? So how do franchisors communicate it effectively?
Yeah. Well, actually, you've made a really valid point about the highway code, because although it's not law, it is still the law of that company. And I have, hands up, just sat a speed awareness course, and the thing that struck me was that there were things on that course that I probably should have registered better. There are changes in the highway code that we don't know about. And I like to think that really it's an operations manual for driving. I mean, I just think that's a great analogy. I'm stealing it, by the way.
Oh, cool.
But it's exactly the same for a business. That there are companies who are very well established. They don't need to make consistent change in the model. But what they do need to be doing, for example, is keeping abreast of marketing techniques, AI.
Yeah,
I mean, I would say that very few businesses. I'd love to do a survey. I probably should do a survey. It'd be great on social media of how many people have got an AI policy in their manual. Very few will have at this point. But we just being able to refresh and review and making it easy for people to do. So for me, I have designed the software, and this is not about promoting the software. People can do this, but there is a reminder that lands in an inbox which says these pages haven't been looked at for 6 months. You've got a month to read it and review it and update it, because otherwise we're going to snitch on you and we're going to tell the boss that this hasn't been reviewed. Those time limits are set. Some pages only need reviewing once a year. They really aren't critical. Yeah. But if you look at regulated businesses like care companies, the CQC documentation changes. The CQC want to see that is relevant and up to date. If you're not on it, you're risking your business.
Yeah. Going back to AI as well, that changes so rapidly.
Yeah.
And there can be so, by the time you implement something, it could have changed.
Yeah. And
I think it's hard to keep track of that. So how have you noticed that people are keeping track of it as well?
So I think it's not a criticism, but franchising is slightly slower to change.
When I started in franchising, it was 2015, and no one was doing video, and it took a few years for franchising to start picking up on it. Yeah. So it is slow on the uptake, I think.
But some of that is because it's written in stone already, and change becomes more challenging. I love getting into a business where, particularly either a brand new business who is aspirational to engage their franchisees in change and the journey of the franchise, or I'm talking to established businesses who do a regular update with their franchisees, and it's usually a franchise advisory committee, and they will talk about the strategic process for the future. I think it's very easy to get overwhelmed. It's the next big thing. It's kind of, now I'm reading people going, it's like a .com bubble. Things are going to go horribly wrong. They are going to go horribly wrong because we will need to get some legislation around it for certain, that we all need to be very careful how we're using it. The idea of throwing a manual into AI and saying, rejig it or check it, well, suddenly you've put your IP in a domain that you actually probably don't know is private, and the distinct likelihood is that is now shared. I haven't tested it, but I'm guessing you could ask AI, give me a specific brand's manual and see what they say, what they deliver.
Yeah, possibly.
So the answer really about the speed of change is because we are managing more than just one business. We typically have the franchisor has their business, which is franchising, and then they have multiple businesses working alongside them in partnership as franchisees. And we, as franchisors, are responsible to make sure that their businesses are running efficiently and capably, and we don't put them in harm's way. There's a moral and ethical and legal responsibility to make sure that we do the right thing. So we don't jump too fast. That does mean we could probably be seen to be slow. But I think there are lots of franchises who are doing some incredibly good work and really pushing the boundaries. And others, because they have the resources to do that carefully. And others who are really slow and won't take it up for a while.
Do you think that if there's someone who's just sort of looking into franchising, what kind of things do people underestimate about putting together an ops manual and putting together all this stuff? Because they've got a business where it works really well and they look into franchising. What kind of things do they underestimate?
I think they don't underestimate it, actually. Most of the calls that I get, people are frightened that they don't have the time and they've been putting it off and they're intimidated by the document concept. But they think it's going to, they will have been quoted anything, from I can do you one for 100 quid on AI or through to, I'm going to charge you 40, 50 grand. Some businesses will take the time, they will suck the living daylights out of every moment of the day just to craft. But actually, I think that those days are probably past. There are some great, Penny Hopkinson has developed an AI module to design your manual, which is coming soon. Those are brilliant tools. That kind of availability is brilliant. I think that people underestimate how much is already in their business, and also how are we going to get it out of the brains of the people?
Yeah, so I was going to ask you next.
Because we don't write things down. I mean, I'm sure in your business you work largely on your own.
Yeah, and I've got in my head, there's a certain way of doing things, but I never I don't write it down. I don't tell anyone.
No.
But it's kind of like unspoken rules that I live by and work by.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe you should write them down. I'm not sure who for, but you would, I think the minute there are two of you in a business, if there is anybody else, whether they're an accountant but if they are within your business, writing stuff down is actually incredibly useful. And to be honest, that's where my love of process came from. I'm ex-airline. In an airline industry, you do have a lot of manuals, a lot of documentation. I don't know how it is now. It was quite some years ago. But pleased that they do. I hope that they still do, because they're risking people's lives if they don't. But I think it's, there's so much in people's heads. Documenting process is relatively easy. I think they just, for everything that's written down, it's a joyous moment when you say, why do we do this? And people go, I don't know. I think it's always been this way, and I think there's a better way. And that process of building the manual helps the business become better. I really, I genuinely believe, because I see it in people, that they go, I don't know why we do it that way. I don't. And why aren't we using that piece of tech? I read one manual recently and there were 33 pieces of technology and apps that they use. Half of them did the same thing. And I don't know why you would spend the money on that.
Yeah.
So what's it's helped them is to say, this is crazy. This is it's actually costing us money, but B, it's people don't know what they're using. The classic is people using discussion project management tables like, I guess, Monday or Slack or anything like that.
It's literally what I was thinking of when you pulled it up. Yeah.
They use it, but they don't know why. They don't know what they're doing. People hate it or love it. Some people don't read it. You have to email. My husband uses Slack for a company that he works with. I love it. It's a great tool, but only if everybody is actually using it.
So there's some there's stuff that I do, even with Coconut. So where it's like, we talk through Slack, and then there's stuff on Airtable as well. And I'm like, I don't even look on Airtable. Just tell me through Slack what I need to do.
Yeah.
And then I'll do it.
Yeah. And then you get a WhatsApp.
Yeah, there's a WhatsApp group.
And it's missing. Yes, exactly. And I think people get very confused about where they should be communicating, how, what goes where, what speed you're meant to respond at. And I think it's very useful when a company is able to articulate, we're going to use this format for communication. And that's part of the manual. So people say, "Oh, can you give me an index?" Sure, I'll give you a whole list of contents. It will probably be about 40 pages long, of just titles of words that mean very little to you. But we're going to talk about how your company actually runs. What do you see a franchisee doing? So you've always got the pilot stage where you've got your first franchisee. I usually see people after that, because they don't create the manual beforehand. So it's lovely when people are building the manual, as we did before we had a franchisee, because it really helped cement what the processes should be around that. I mean, it's a pretty dull subject, isn't it? Because you're
it's a lot of detail, isn't it?
I've got to write it all down.
Yeah.
But the benefits of it are huge, and the protection level in a manual is, the day it's written, is really high. But if you don't keep it up to date, you lose some of that.
Yeah, it's vital for franchises as well, because otherwise you could have one franchisee doing something and one doing something else.
Yeah.
Everyone's using different logos or something, and it would be absolute carnage.
Yes.
How did you deal with it when you were a franchisor? How did you communicate that effectively?
I would say very badly, in a way, because ours was a paper manual, and we would send updates in the post.
Oh, right. Wow.
And then of course we did send some emails, but we would tell them it was changing, and we would say that there's an update coming, there's an addendum, and the more business or administratively orientated franchisees would have filed them very neatly in their file.
Yeah.
The others, you'd arrive and there'd just be a load of envelopes stacked on top or shoved into a file if you were lucky, or just missing in action. So the answer really, franchisors should be somewhat controlling. That's a feature, because I want to really protect my brand. I want people to be doing it well, and I really want them to experience the benefits of doing this well and going in the right direction. So I did feel that was an important part of what I did, but I am a rule follower. You don't want too many renegade franchisees, because that's not the nature of our industry. But so we didn't have Zoom. That's actually something that's probably very relevant. Online video calls, really until 2020, sadly, driven by lockdown, were really not a mainstream for everybody. So we'd sold by 2018. We didn't really ever have that as a mechanism. I do like the idea that there's a sort of weekly call with all your franchisees to get them together, to just say, we've got a couple of changes, we'll send out an email, or we'll do whatever we're going to do, but that it's communicated in different ways in addition to just sending out something.
Yeah. It's weird to think that Zoom wasn't really a thing.
I know.
I was using Zoom before COVID, but I can't remember how long for, and I certainly wasn't going to events on Zoom.
No.
And I'd say a lot of my meetings were in person, and now I'd say 95% are on Zoom.
Yeah. Well, we started Wilkins in 2010, and I remember speaking at a conference and saying we didn't actually have the cloud fully formed in 2010. Now I couldn't live without it. I've literally just switched data or bought a new laptop for my mum, and I've just been able to upload into the cloud and move it over. I did not have to. It was not difficult. It was not a major headache. Teaching her how to use the new laptop might be, but the point is that wasn't available. Technology has moved so fast that there are still references to burning CD-ROMs in some manuals, and. I think it's incumbent on a franchisor to keep that up to date and to change that. But moving with technology, being an early adopter is one thing, but do you go the Betamax or VHS route? And if you back the wrong horse, you're stuck. So being a quick adopter is not always the right option. So hence back to the
back
sort of
to AI,
speed of the speed of adoption of things.
Yeah, because like if you go really like hard down the AI route, but then it ends up slightly different, and people maybe use like a mixture of AI and whatever.
Yeah.
Because like AI has only really been a thing for a year or 2 years, so like ish.
Yeah, it's been available. We've
Yeah.
probably been using it in many parts of our life for way longer than we've realised, or certainly I have. My interest in looking into its history and its worries, I love to work with the more geeky amongst us who will say, don't do that or do this.
Yeah.
And my business partner is technical. He's a developer. And so he has a keen interest to keep us on top of things in that way. But I think we have to step back and say, how important is it for us to make a change now that will potentially change again very quickly? Or do we take a much more considered view and run the risk of being behind the times, but know that that's what we've got to do? I think, coming back to sort of if I had the time over again with franchising, the one thing that I know we did right was we used professionals in their field to guide us.
Yeah.
Feels more expensive, but it's a lot less expensive than the errors that you make.
Yeah, it's like trying to turn a giant shipping container.
Yeah.
Because you've got all the franchisees on board.
Absolutely.
And if you turn too quickly, it's going to turn over.
Yeah.
I'm full of analogies
you are,
today,
it's
aren't I?
great.
Yeah.
I'm stealing that one as well. But it's actually, franchises like that. We often say, once you've started out, it's almost impossible to change. It isn't impossible to change if there is a driver from within the franchise. So if you're listening to what they're saying and you discuss the opportunities, I'm sure franchises, when you think about it, years ago, when they say, well, we're going to introduce technology, we're going to have a computer system, I'm fairly confident that there will have been a large faction that were really resistant to that. Now we can't really live without it. Everything is driven through our tech. And so I think certainly in the franchise industry, we have to have mechanisms to stay on top of and ahead of the game of our competitors in whatever industry we're in. But because we have more than one voice, so it's not, as a franchisor, once you've got franchisees, you are no longer really on your own in that regard. There are some ways you are. But you've got some voices of your franchisees who can help take you in the direction that you and they want to move. So you're probably ahead of the game of your competitors, but you're not necessarily ahead of... I'm always embarrassed when I look at some of these fantastic franchises their technology is outstanding, they're absolutely acing it, but they often have the advantage of being quite new.
Yeah.
So they're able to be a little bit sexier in that field. I think it's a very I don't want to be an old fuddy-duddy about it, but I'm really clear that we don't like change. So we've got to adopt it at the right time and at the right speed.
Yeah, so so everyone kind of feels like it's inevitable at that point. And this is... Yeah, because they don't want to change because this is always how we've done it.
Yeah.
So they need to get to the point where it's like, well, we can't really do it without this now.
Yeah.
So it's part of it.
Yeah.
So it sort of seeps in rather than, boom, we're changing it.
So one of my clients has introduced a fantastic new website. I'm sure for some companies, the type of website that they've implemented was probably old news. But in the industry that they're in, it was a really innovative and really fantastic interface with customers, and all the franchisees were very skeptical. They found it very difficult to take them on the journey until suddenly their lead generation is doubling. And actually it's handling most of that, but they're actually almost signed up by the time they reach the franchisee. So the evidence, you can't deny the evidence at that point. The problem is you don't have that at the point that you're trying to create change. Yeah. So for me, a conversation with franchisors, particularly very new and young franchisors, is how are you going to affect change? Understand that we don't want to recruit really entrepreneurial people because they won't follow your model.
No.
They won't necessarily love what you do. But you do need people who will adopt and adapt. So there's a fine line. You know, taking the checkbook and pulse is not enough anymore.
Yeah, one of the questions I ask people when I'm interviewing franchisees is, why did you choose the franchise rather than going it alone?
Yeah.
So you need those kind of people that feel like, I want to run my own business, but I kind of need the help to do it.
Yeah.
So,
well, there's huge gaps. So often people who want to run their own business have never run their own business. So the bit in the manual which tells you how to run your own business, the sort of practice, the good practice around that, whether that's actually strictly business, but also I am seeing more and more franchisors embracing the sort of mental health challenges of working in business. So how do you keep your business fit, but also your body fit and your mind fit for this business to be able to continue to give you longevity, back to the sustainability really.
Yeah.
And that's a really attractive thing to read. But often people are coming into a business thinking, it'd be really great, I'm running my own business, I can choose what I want to do, I can go my own way. You are replacing leaving a job with another set of challenges. They're just challenges that you're choosing, and you are perhaps a little bit more able to make those decisions. I don't think I've ever worked harder than as a self-employed or business owner. I mean, it's just simple as that. When I was an employee, I probably didn't work that hard.
You get to kind of go home at 5, don't you?
Yeah.
And that's it. And then when you're running a business, it's like you work harder than anyone, really.
Yeah. Well, when I sold Wilkins and joined a company, I have to say one of the things that on my mind about being employed was taking a holiday that was paid.
Yeah.
And that's quite a leap, I felt very keen to do that, but it just doesn't suit me.
I have no idea what is like the paid holiday that you get a year. Like, I have no idea what you're meant to take.
No, it's 28 days or something, and bank holidays, and it's horrendous.
I don't think I've done that this year.
No, I've worked.
Like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Wow. So what made you want to go from being a franchisee to being a franchisor? What made that decision for you?
I think we had always wanted to be a franchisor.
Yeah.
I think that being a franchisee was a good diversion in the end. And actually, I had worked in property and I had worked in relocation very early on. So it was an attractive brand. It was called Medics on the Move. They're not out there now. And one of the things, I think I'm a frustrated medic. I would love to have been a medic, that's for sure. And just didn't ever follow that. And so I was attracted by the brand, and that side track was not a bad thing, because I learned about the mindset of a franchisee, because I don't think I was probably a typical franchisee because I am a real rule follower. The problem is for the franchisor that the rules were not written down and I needed them, and I was nagging all the time. Look, I don't know how to do this. Tell me what file I'm supposed to use. Where am I supposed to put this? That might sound very childlike, but actually there's a lot of administration around lettings. We didn't have a computer system that was fit for purpose, all of those things. So I think the mindset of any business owner has to be the same. It has to be, I want to grow this business, but I want to love what I do. And I think those two things hand in hand mean that when there's a down day, and you hope there are fewer down days than up, but when there is a down day, you've got some resilience to say, well, actually, I still love this. This is still the right thing for me. It is the vehicle to my end goal.
Yeah.
But I think for franchisors, I often meet people in an industry, and my first sort of conversation with them is that franchising is a whole other business. Whatever you do, video production, window fitting, driving a vans. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is that you do, you are no longer that. You are a franchisor. And I think, you know, for me, it came home quite clearly because we registered the franchise business, Wilkins Chimney Sweep franchise. And I got a call from HMRC, and she said, you can't run two businesses in the same industry. It was a VAT question, and be separate for VAT. You know, why are you doing that? Because it's quite obvious you're just splitting it into two businesses to stay below the VAT threshold or something. And I suddenly realised, of course, that I had registered the franchise as chimneys in the field of chimney sweeping, which is complete rubbish. There is no pull-down menu, by the way, or SIC code for franchising, and that's kind of a little mission that I'm on. I often say, you know, until when we insure our businesses or or in the company's house slot, until there is an option to tick, I'm a franchise, we haven't quite made it in franchising, despite how many people we employ.
Yeah,
and
right. Well, so what would you put at the moment then? Would be like a management consultancy or something?
Yeah.
Weird.
Probably a training company.
Yeah.
I mean, there isn't a... Training companies a whole other challenge, because if you try and say you're a trainer, they often pick up that you're a horse trainer. That's not terribly useful. Although there are some franchisees who are as challenging as horse training, I suspect. But yeah, it's that may sound very simple, but actually, until we have those mechanisms, it's very difficult to get a franchisor to acknowledge and recognise that this is a whole other company.
Yeah.
It's a whole other set of behaviours. And there's a reason why consultants offer their assistance to businesses, because they are brilliant at what they do, but they've now got to become great at recruiting and selecting people and supporting them and mentoring them in a whole other way, in line with a model that they have designed. They know their business, they know how to fill bean cans or whatever it is they're doing, but they don't know franchising. And that's I think that's probably one of the biggest hurdles. It's also one of the reasons lots of people don't do it, because the new business is a bit of a money pit, but they're still making money on the other business, and where do you split your time?
There's a lot of people skills you need to manage people. It
really is.
How do you help people get around that then, and help people understand that?
Well, I hope that I do. I hope that I do, because I talk to them about it. I'm very frank about being a franchisor, that I loved it. It absolutely played to my skill set, and I will talk about my skill set, which is rule following, process, support. I'm a people person. I want to spend time with people, hate the phone, but love being, with people. I'm a trainer by profession. That's sort of the backstory. All of those skills are very relevant in a franchise environment. You're still running a business. You've got to have all of the other business nous, but you've really got to play to those strengths. And that's not necessarily what you are when you are a chimney sweep or whatever.
Nice. So if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
LinkedIn's a great place. I will answer it. So it's Louise Harris, QFP. But I'm really happy for people to email Louise at franchiseprojects.co.uk, or just pick up the phone. But I'm not going to give my phone in case you put it on the internet.
Well, people, if they go on LinkedIn, they'll find. If they Google it, they will find it.
They will.
It's that easy.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the Franchise Marketing Show.
Thank you.
And
thanks for having me.
See you next time.
Cheerio.